15 years. That's how long Tracy and I had been married. We weren't rich or glamorous, but we had built a good life, a simple life. We shared laughs, built traditions, and even managed to weather a few storms over the years. I thought we were stronger for it. I thought we had the kind of bond that couldn't be broken, but hindsight has a funny way of showing you the cracks you never noticed before. It was a warm spring morning when I surprised Tracy with the news about the trip to Florida. She was sitting at the kitchen table, her blonde hair still a little damp from her morning shower, sipping her coffee like she did every day at 7:15 a.m. sharp. "We're going to Florida next week," I announced, holding up the brochures I'd picked up from the travel agency. Her eyes widened, and a bright smile spread across her face. For a moment, I felt like the young man who had swept her off her feet all those years ago. "Jack, are you serious?" she asked, jumping up from her seat to hug me. "You planned this? When?" "Been saving for months," I said, shrugging like it was no big deal. "Figured we could use a break. You've been working so hard lately." Her face softened and she kissed me on the cheek. "You're amazing. I can't believe you did this." I laughed. "Well, you deserve it. Besides, what's the point of owning your own shop if you can't take a week off now and then?" I ran an auto repair shop, Harper's Auto. It wasn't much, but it kept food on the table and a roof over our heads. Tracy worked part-time at a local boutique, something she'd picked up after our son, Daniel, moved out for college. She always said it was just to keep busy, but part of me thought she missed being needed. The trip was supposed to be a way for us to reconnect, to remind ourselves of what mattered most. Little did I know, I'd be the only one trying to hold us together. The day we arrived at the resort, everything seemed perfect. The place was beautiful. White sandy beaches, turquoise water, and palm trees swaying in the warm breeze. It felt like stepping into a postcard. "This is incredible," Tracy said as we walked to our room. She looked around, her eyes lighting up like a kid on Christmas morning. "Only the best for you," I said, giving her a playful notch. Our room had a balcony overlooking the ocean, and Tracy spent the first hour sitting out there, taking pictures and posting them online. I watched her from the doorway, smiling to myself. This was exactly what we needed. The first few days passed in a blissful haze. We spent our mornings walking along the shore, our afternoons lounging by the pool, and our evenings sharing seafood platters at beachfront restaurants. For the first time in what felt like forever, Tracy seemed genuinely happy. "You've really outdone yourself, Jack," she said one night as we sipped margaritas under the tiki torches. "Only the best for my girl," I replied, feeling a swell of pride. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I mean it. You've been working so hard for us. I don't know how I got so lucky." If I'd been paying attention, I might have noticed the way her smile didn't quite reach her eyes, but I was too busy basking in the glow of what I thought was our perfect marriage. Looking back, the signs were all there. It started small. Tracy began taking long walks along the beach, always on her own. I didn't think much of it at first. She said she needed time to clear her head, and I figured a little solitude was harmless. But then there was her phone. Tracy had never been one to keep secrets, but now she was glued to the screen, her fingers flying over the keyboard whenever a notification popped up. When I asked who she was texting, she brushed it off with a laugh. "Oh, just some friends from work," she said, tucking her phone into her back. Then came the excuses. "Hey, want to hit the pool later?" I asked one afternoon. She hesitated, looking out toward the ocean. "I was actually thinking of checking out the yoga class they're offering on the pier. It's supposed to be amazing." "Yoga?" I said, trying not to sound disappointed. "You sure you don't want company?" "It's just an hour," she said, kissing my cheek. "I'll meet you back at the pool after," but she didn't. She came back almost 2 hours later, her cheeks flushed, her hair tousled by the wind. "How was yoga?" I asked, forcing a smile. "Great," she said, avoiding my eyes. And then there was the moment I first saw him. It was late afternoon, and I was heading back to our spot on the beach after grabbing drinks from the bar. Tracy wasn't in her chair. Instead, she was over by the surf shack, talking to a tall, tan guy with sun-bleached hair and a cocky grin. He was shirtless, his board shorts slung low on his hips, and Tracy was laughing at something he said. I stopped in my tracks, watching from a distance. There was nothing overtly inappropriate about the way they stood. No touching, no obvious flirting, but the ease between them made my stomach twist. When she returned to our spot a few minutes later, I asked casually, "Who was that?" "Who?" she asked, frowning. "The guy at the surf shack," I said, gesturing toward the beach. "Oh, just one of the instructors," she said, brushing it off. "He was telling me about some paddle boarding lessons." "Thinking of taking one?" I asked. "Maybe," she said with a shrug, reaching for her book. "Seemed fun." I nodded, but something didn't sit right. Over the next couple of days, I started noticing more little things. Tracy seemed distracted, her attention always elsewhere. She laughed a little too loudly at the jokes of the young surf instructor, Tyler, and she spent more and more time walking along the beach. Still, I didn't want to believe anything was wrong. Tracy was my wife. She loved me, didn't she? Looking back now, I can't believe how blind I was. I wanted so badly to believe in the life we had built together that I ignored all the signs. But everything became clear the night I met Frank Sullivan. "Son," he said, leaning closer, his voice low. "I don't mean to meddle, but you might want to keep an eye on your wife." My stomach dropped. "What are you talking about?" I asked, my voice tight. "I saw her earlier," Frank said, nodding toward the pier. "She was with that surf instructor. They were holding hands." For a moment, the world seemed to tilt. "Holding hands? Tracy?" I laughed, nervously shaking my head. "You must be mistaken." Frank gave me a long, steady look. "I've been married long enough to recognize the signs." "I'm sorry, son, but I thought you want to know." And just like that, the cracks in my perfect world split wide open. I couldn't sleep that night. The sound of the ocean outside our balcony, usually so soothing, now felt like a cruel joke. My mind replayed Frank Sullivan's words over and over again. "I saw her earlier. They were holding hands." Could he be wrong? Maybe he mistook someone else for Tracy. She'd never do something like that. Not my Tracy. But doubt was a tricky thing. It crept in and settled, refusing to leave. When morning came, Tracy was her usual self, or at least she pretended to be. She hummed softly as she poured herself a cup of coffee. Her blonde hair pulled back into a loose ponytail. "Hey, want to grab some paddle boards this morning?" she asked, smiling at me over the rim of her mug. I nodded slowly, studying her. She seemed normal, too normal. "Yeah," I said. "That sounds good." If she noticed the tension in my voice, she didn't let on. The beach was already bustling with activity by the time we set up our chairs near the water. Families splashed in the waves, couples strolled along the shore, and a group of kids built an impressive sandcastle nearby. Tracy adjusted her sunglasses, tilting her face toward the sun. "It's so peaceful here," she said. "Yeah," I replied, though my eyes weren't on the water. They were on the surf shack farther down the beach, where a group of instructors were setting up for the day. "Be right back," I said, grabbing my phone and standing up. "Where are you going?" she asked, glancing up. "Just to grab a drink," I said, forcing a smile. But I didn't go to the bar. Instead, I wandered toward the surf shack, keeping my distance as I watched the instructors joking around and prepping their boards. And there he was, Tyler. He looked exactly like Frank described, tanned, shirtless, and oozing confidence. He was helping a woman adjust her paddleboard leash, flashing that cocky grin that probably made half the resort swoon. I clenched my fists and turned away, heading back to Tracy. I didn't have proof yet, but my gut told me Frank wasn't mistaken. Tracy was scrolling through her phone when I returned, her expression distant. "Everything okay?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Yeah," she said, quickly locking her screen, just checking in with the girls from work. I didn't press her, but something about the way she avoided my eyes made my chest tighten. As the day went on, the doubts gnawed at me. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. That night, as Tracy slept soundly beside me, I found myself scrolling through her social media. Her recent posts were full of smiles, sunsets, and tropical drinks, but there was nothing unusual, no obvious signs of trouble. Maybe I was overreacting, maybe Frank had been wrong. But then I noticed something in an Instagram story she posted just a few hours earlier. It was a short clip of the beach, the waves lapping at the shore. In the corner of the frame, almost too small to notice, was Tyler. He wasn't doing anything suspicious, just walking past with a surfboard under his arm. But the fact that he was there at all set my teeth on edge. The next morning, Tracy was up early. She kissed me on the cheek as I yawned and stretched. I'm going to check out the yoga class on the pier, she said. Yoga again? I asked, frowning. It's so relaxing, she said with a laugh. You should try it sometime. I watched her go, her sundress fluttering in the breeze as she walked toward the pier. A part of me wanted to follow her, but I held back. I didn't want to be that husband, the paranoid one who couldn't trust his wife. But when 2 hours passed and she still hadn't come back, I couldn't sit still any longer. I headed toward the pier, scanning the crowd for any sign of her. My heart was pounding, my hands clammy. But when I reached the yoga area, it was empty. Tracy wasn't there. Back at the resort, I found her sitting by the pool, a cocktail in hand. Hey, I said, forcing a smile. How was yoga? Great, she said, not missing a beat. Really? Because I stopped by the pier and it was empty. Her smile faltered for a split second, but she recovered quickly. Oh, they moved it to the lawn by the main building. Guess I forgot to tell you. She was lying. I could see it in her eyes, hear it in her voice, but instead of calling her out, I just nodded. Glad you had fun, I said. That evening, I ran into Frank again. He was sitting at the bar, nursing another rum and coke. Jack, he said, nodding to me. How's it going? Fine, I said, though my voice lacked conviction. He studied me for a moment, then leaned back in his chair. Let me guess, you didn't believe me? It's not that, I said, shaking my head. I don't have proof. Frank sighed, swirling his drink. Son, I've been around a long time. I've seen a lot of good men get blindsided by women they thought they knew. Don't ignore the signs. I wanted to argue to tell him he didn't know what he was talking about, but deep down, I knew he was right. The next day, I decided to keep a closer eye on Tracy. She was cheerful as ever, chatting about paddle boarding and seafood dinners. But I noticed the little things, the way she glanced at her phone when she thought I wasn't looking, the way her laughter seemed just a little too forced. That afternoon, I saw her talking to Tyler again. This time, they were standing near the lifeguard station, their heads close together. I stayed back, watching as she laughed at something he said, her hand brushing against his arm. My stomach churned. This wasn't just friendly banter. When she came back to our spot on the beach, I asked casually, what were you two talking about? Who? She asked, frowning. Tyler, I said, nodding toward the lifeguard station. Oh, just some paddleboarding tips, she said with a shrug. You seem to be spending a lot of time with him, I said, my tone sharper than I intended. She rolled her eyes. Jack, you're overreacting. He's just being nice. But I wasn't overreacting. Not this time. That night, as Tracy slept beside me, I stared at the ceiling, my mind racing. Frank's words echoed in my head. Don't ignore the signs. The cracks in our marriage, the ones I'd been too blind to see, were growing wider by the second. And deep down, I knew they were about to shatter. The next morning, I decided to follow her. I needed answers. And this time, I wasn't going to let her lies fool me. The morning sun poured through the hotel room's thin curtains, but the light didn't bring any comfort. My resolve had hardened overnight. Today, I was going to get answers. Tracy was already awake, standing by the balcony in her floral robe, sipping coffee and scrolling through her phone. She looked calm, carefree, like nothing was wrong. That only fueled my anger. What's on the agenda today? I asked, forcing a casual tone as I got out of bed. She glanced up briefly, her expression neutral. I was thinking of taking a walk along the beach again. You don't mind, do you? Another walk, another excuse. Not at all, I said, hiding the sarcasm that threatened to creep into my voice. I'll probably hit the pool for a bit. She smiled faintly, setting her coffee cup down. Perfect. I won't be long. But I wasn't staying by the pool. As soon as Tracy left, I grabbed my sunglasses and followed her at a distance. The beach was already busy with early risers staking out their spots, but Tracy didn't slow down. She walked with purpose, her steps light but deliberate, weaving between families and couples. When she reached the surf shack, my suspicions were confirmed. There he was, Tyler, leaning against a stack of paddleboards, his cocky grin plastered across his face. They greeted each other like old friends, her hand briefly brushing his arm. I couldn't hear what they were saying over the noise of the beach, but her laughter rang out like a slap to my face. I stayed back, hiding behind a large umbrella, my fists clenched at my sides. The anger bubbling inside me was almost unbearable, but I needed to see more. After a few minutes of talking, Tyler gestured toward the water, and Tracy nodded. She followed him to the edge of the shore where a paddleboard was waiting. He helped her onto it, his hands lingering a second too long on her waist. She didn't pull away. I had seen enough. As soon as Tracy paddled out into the water, I approached the surf shack. Tyler's co-workers were busy with other guests, barely noticing me as I leaned against the railing and waited. When Tyler finally returned, he looked surprised to see me, but his grin didn't falter. "Hey," he said, casually wiping his hands on a towel. "Can I help you with something?" "Yeah," I said, my voice cold. "You can tell me what the hell you're doing with my wife." He didn't even flinch. If anything, his grin widened. "Your wife?" he said, feigning innocence. "Oh, you mean Tracy? She's great, isn't she?" My blood boiled. "Don't play games with me. I've seen the way you look at her, the way she looks at you." Tyler shrugged, leaning back against the railing. "Look, man, I'm just being friendly. She's the one who keeps coming around." "Friendly?" I snapped, stepping closer. "Helping her onto a paddleboard isn't friendly. Laughing with her, touching her arm, that's not friendly." His smirk turned into a full-blown smile. "What can I say? Maybe she likes a little excitement. Maybe she's bored." My fists clenched at my sides. "Stay away from her," I growled. "Or what?" Tyler said, his tone dripping with mockery. "You gonna hit me?" He stepped closer, his grin taunting. "Face it, old man, you can't compete. She wants someone who can keep up. Someone like me." That was the last straw. Without thinking, I shoved him hard. The next few seconds were a blur. Tyler stumbled back, but quickly regained his footing. Before I could say another word, he lunged at me, his shoulder colliding with my chest. We fell to the sand, a flurry of fists and curses. The crowd around us grew, phones raised to capture the chaos. "Jack, stop." Tracy's voice cut through the noise, but I didn't care. All I could see was Tyler's smug face. All I could hear were his words echoing in my head. "You can't compete." He managed to land a punch on my jaw, the sharp pain snapping me out of my rage. I pushed him off, standing and brushing sand off my arms. "Enough!" Tracy shouted, stepping between us. "What the hell is wrong with you, Jack?" "Me," I said, glaring at her. "What's wrong with me? What about you, Tracy? How long has this been going on?" Her eyes widened in shock, but I couldn't tell if it was genuine or just for show. "Don't do this here," she hissed, glancing at the crowd. "We'll talk later." "No," I said firmly. "We're talking now? Or should I let everyone here know what kind of woman you really are?" Tyler laughed, brushing sand off his board shorts. "Man, you really don't get it, do you?" "Shut up," I snapped, turning back to Tracy. "Well, are you going to deny it?" She crossed her arms, her lips pressed into a thin line. "You're making a scene?" "I'm making a scene," I said, my voice rising. "You've been sneaking around with him behind my back, and I'm making a scene?" Tracy opened her mouth to respond, but Tyler cut her off. "Look, I'm not into all this drama," he said, stepping back. "Find someone else to deal with your mess." Her face turned red, her eyes darting between us. "Tyler, wait." But he was already walking away, leaving her standing there, exposed and alone. The crowd began to disperse, the show over, but I wasn't finished. I pointed toward the resort. "Go pack your things, Tracy. We're done." She opened her mouth to protest, but the look in my eyes must have stopped her. Without another word, she turned and walked away. Her shoulders slumped in defeat. I stayed on the beach for a long time after that, the sound of the waves drowning out my thoughts. For the first time in 15 years, I felt free. That night, as I sat alone on the balcony, I made a decision. If she thought she could humiliate me, she had another thing coming. It was time for the world to know the truth. The crowd was starting to thin, but a few people still lingered near the surf shack. Their phones raised, hoping for one last shot of drama. Tracy stood frozen in the sand, her face a mix of shock and anger. Tyler was gone, his words still hanging in the air. "Find someone else to deal with your mess." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The waves lapped at the shore, the sound almost deafening in the silence between us. "You need to stop this," Tracy said finally, her voice low but sharp. "You've embarrassed both of us enough for one day." "Embarrassed us?" I repeated, my voice rising. "You embarrassed me the moment you decided he was worth risking everything we built." She glanced around, her cheeks flushing as a couple nearby looked over. Keep your voice down, she hissed. No, I snapped. I'm done keeping quiet. You've been lying to me for how long? A week? A month? Longer? She folded her arms. Her lips pressed into a thin line. I told you nothing happened. I laughed bitterly. Nothing? Tracy, I saw the way you looked at him. I saw the way he touched you. Do you think I'm blind? You're paranoid, she shot back. You've always been so insecure, Jack. That's why I couldn't. She cut herself off, but the damage was already done. Couldn't what? I demanded, stepping closer. She didn't answer, but her silence spoke volumes. The anger that had been simmering inside me boiled over. Without another word, I turned and walked back toward the resort. Where are you going? Tracy called after me, but I didn't respond. By the time I reached our room, my hands were shaking. I threw open the closet doors, yanking out her neatly packed suitcase. The sight of her things, her dresses, her sandals, even the perfume I'd bought her for our anniversary, made my stomach churn. I dragged the suitcase out onto the balcony, but that wasn't enough. No, this needed to be public. I grabbed the suitcase and stormed back down to the beach. The few people who were still there stopped and turned as I approached, their curiosity piqued. Tracy was still standing where I'd left her, her arms wrapped around herself. Jack, what are you doing? She asked, her voice shaking now. I didn't answer. Instead, I unzipped the suitcase and began hurling her things into the ocean, one by one. Her dresses, her shoes, even that damn bottle of perfume went sailing into the waves. Jack, stop, she cried, running toward me. You wanted freedom, Tracy? I shouted, my voice cracking with rage. There it is. Go swim after it. She grabbed my arm, trying to pull me away from the suitcase, but I shook her off. You are my everything, Tracy, I said, my voice dropping, cold and sharp. Turns out, I was just your backup plan. The crowd had started filming again, their murmurs and whispers buzzing in the background. Jack, please. Tracy begged, her voice breaking, but I was done listening. With one final heave, I tossed the empty suitcase into the water and turned to face her. We're done, I said, my voice steady now. Pack what's left and get out. She stared at me, her mouth opening and closing like she was trying to find the right words, but nothing came. As I walked away, I felt a strange sense of relief. The weight I'd been carrying, the doubt, the anger, the heartbreak felt lighter with every step. When I reached the bar near the resort, Frank was still there, nursing his usual rum and coke. He looked up as I approached, his eyes narrowing slightly. You all right, son? I laughed dryly, shaking my head. Not even close. Frank motioned to the bartender. Get this man a drink. Sounds like he's earned it. For the first time that day, I let myself breathe. As I sipped my whiskey, I stared out at the ocean, the waves crashing against the shore. Tracy might have thought she won, but she was wrong. This wasn't her victory. This was her loss. And tomorrow, the world would know it too. That night, I sat on the balcony, my laptop open, sorting through the photos and videos I'd taken over the past week. By morning, the truth would be out there for everyone to see. The night after everything fell apart was the longest of my life. I sat on the balcony of our hotel room, staring out at the ocean, a whiskey in one hand and my laptop in the other. The sounds of the waves had always been soothing to me, but tonight they felt hollow, like a reminder of how small I'd become in my own story. Tracy was gone now, off to some friend's room, or maybe still sulking down by the bar. I didn't care. For the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about her feelings. I was thinking about mine. For 15 years, I trusted her, loved her, sacrificed for her. And how had she repaid me? With lies, manipulation, and public humiliation. Her face from earlier that day flashed in my mind, red with anger, her voice cutting as she hissed, "You've embarrassed both of us enough for one day," as if I were the one who'd ruined everything. But that wasn't going to be the end of my story. No, I wasn't going to let her or that smug bastard Tyler walk away unscathed. They'd humiliated me in front of strangers, laughed at my expense, and treated me like I was nothing. By morning, everyone would know who they really were. I opened my laptop and began sorting through the photos and videos I'd taken over the past few days. There wasn't much, just a few candid shots of Tracy on the beach. A video of her laughing with Tyler near the surf shack, her hand brushing his arm. I hesitated for a moment, staring at the screen. Was this too much? Did I really want to air our dirty laundry for the world to see? Then I remembered the way she'd looked at him, the way she'd lied to my face over and over again. Yes, I wanted this. I needed this. The editing process was brutal. Every time I re-watched the footage, it felt like twisting a knife in my own chest, but I kept going, fueled by a mix of anger and determination. I started with a short montage of happier moments. Tracy smiling on the balcony. The two of us walking along the beach, drinks clinking under tiki torches. Then came the cracks. I added the clip of her laughing with Tyler. Their bodies too close for comfort. The shot of her walking toward the surf shack while I watched from a distance. The moment she lied about yoga. Her voice just a little too light. Her eyes darting away from mine. And finally, the fight. The audio wasn't great. Wind and waves muffled most of it, but the words were clear enough. You're paranoid, Jack. That's why I couldn't. This is why I needed someone else. Look at yourself. Face it, old man. You can't compete. I ended the video with the final scene. Me throwing her suitcase into the ocean. Her screams echoing as the crowd murmured and filmed. The title appeared in bold, white letters against a black screen. My wife cheated on me with a surf instructor. Here's the proof. By the time I hit upload, the first rays of dawn were creeping over the horizon. My hands were shaking, my heart pounding in my chest. I closed the laptop and leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly. For the first time in days, I felt something close to peace. The video gained traction faster than I expected. By the time I checked my phone at lunch, it had already racked up over 10,000 views. The comments came flooding in, a mix of support and outrage. Man, I've been there. Stay strong. She didn't deserve you, bro. That surf dude is trash. Hope he gets fired. A few were harsher, directed at Tracy. She's a piece of work. Good riddance. Hope she enjoys being alone. And then there were the private messages. One stood out in particular. Hey Jack, your story really hit home. I went through something similar last year. If you ever want to talk, let me know. Maybe we can grab a drink sometime. I stared at the message for a long time, my thumb hovering over the reply button. For the first time in weeks, I smiled. That night, as I watched the view count climb higher and higher, I realized something. I didn't lose myself when I lost her. I found myself, and for the first time in a long time, I felt ready to move on. The numbers on the video kept climbing. By the end of the first day, it had over 100,000 views. By the second, it was trending. At first, I wasn't sure how to feel. Watching strangers dissect the most painful moments of my life in the comment section was surreal. But as I scrolled through their messages, I realized something. I wasn't alone. Man, this hit me right in the gut. I went through the same thing last year. Stay strong, brother. You're better off without her, Jack. Trust me, I know. This guy's a legend. Throwing her stuff in the ocean? Iconic. The support was overwhelming. Every like, every comment felt like a small piece of validation. Proof that I wasn't crazy, that what she'd done was as wrong as I felt it was. That first night, I slept better than I had in weeks. No tossing and turning. No staring at the ceiling, replaying every argument, every lie. When I woke up, I checked my phone out of habit. More views, more comments, and a new message from the woman who'd reached out before. Hi, Jack. I just watched your video again. I hope this doesn't sound weird, but you seem like a really good guy. If you're ever in Colorado, let me know. First drinks on me. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't expected, hope. The days after the video went live were a whirlwind. Friends I hadn't heard from in years started reaching out, some offering support, others just curious about the drama. My buddy Mike from the shop even called to say, man, you're famous. Harper's Auto is going to be packed next week. Everyone's going to want to meet the guy who threw his cheating wife stuff in the ocean. I laughed, but it felt good to know that life was moving forward. Even Tracy's family got involved. Her sister, Anna, called me, her voice shaky. Jack, I'm so sorry, she said. I had no idea she was doing this to you. She always talked about how perfect you two were. Yeah, I said, the bitterness creeping into my voice. Turns out it was all an act. I don't know what to say, Anna replied. Just, you deserve better. I hope you find it. Then there was Tracy. She called me once, the day after the video blew up. I let it go to voicemail. Jack, this is insane. She said, her voice trembling. You need to take that video down. People are harassing me. I've already lost so much. Please don't make this worse. I deleted the message. The strangest part was running into Tyler at the resort bar 2 days later. I'd assumed he'd skipped town after everything, but there he was sitting at the counter, nursing a beer. He spotted me before I could leave. Hey, Jack, he said, raising his glass with a smirk. I didn't respond, but he didn't seem to care. Guess you got what you wanted, he said, taking a sip. I saw the video. Damn, you really went all out. I stared at him, the anger bubbling up again, but I kept my voice calm. What do you want, Tyler? He shrugged. Nothing, man. Just saying, you played your cards well. You think this is a game? I asked, my voice low. Of course it is, he said, leaning back in his chair. Life's a game, Jack. You win some, you lose some. She lost you. I lost her. Guess you're the winner this time. I didn't bother replying. I turned and walked out, leaving him to his beer. Back home, things slowly started to feel normal again. The shop was busier than ever, and for the first time in years, I found myself looking forward to each day. One evening, as I was closing up, Mike came in holding 2 beers. To new beginnings, he said, handing me one. To moving on, I replied, clinking bottles with him. I never heard from Tracy again after that voicemail. I'd like to say I didn't think about her anymore, but that wouldn't be true. Sometimes late at night, I catch myself wondering where she was, what she was doing, but then I'd remember her words on the beach. This is why I needed someone else. And just like that, the pain would fade. A few weeks later, I got another message from the woman in Colorado. Hey, I'll be in Indiana next month visiting family. Want to grab that drink? I stared at the screen for a long time before typing back. I'd like that. Let me know when you're in town. Looking back, I don't regret what happened. Losing Tracy hurt, but it taught me something valuable. The only person you can truly rely on is yourself. For 15 years, I gave her everything I had and she threw it away. But now, I'm stronger, wiser, and for the first time in a long time, I'm finally free.